Hi, I'm Justin Diamond, and thank you for tuning in for Chapter 5 of my book, Giant Special Tokyo Love. My everlasting summer at UF was ending. I was forced to start thinking about my future, really thinking about it, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with my life. I would graduate soon with a degree in English, and aside from writing a novel, I had no idea. After finishing a game of World of Warcraft, I clicked another icon on my desktop, the rarely used Google Earth. There, before me, spun a globe, and it was mine, to play in and travel wherever I desired. I was still working part-time, teaching English as a second language at the university, a teacher's assistant. Most of my coworkers had the intention of traveling and teaching abroad. English, they assured me, was a language that everybody wanted to learn. With a flick of my wrist, I spun the virtual globe. In the whole world, there were really only two places that interested me: Spain and Japan. I stopped the globe on Europe and zoomed in on Spain. Spain. Spain because I had history there. My family was from Spain, at least my mother's side was. Growing up in Miami had given me a good ear for Spanish, although I didn't speak it very well. Living abroad in Spain for a few years would change that. I wanted to be bilingual. I wanted to think and to dream in another language. That was the real goal, wasn't it? Any dream in Spanish would be a nice dream. It was an eccentric thing to want, but it would be nice. And they played chess in Spain, didn't they? I spun the globe over to Japan. Even though I wasn't Japanese, I felt drawn to the island nation. It fascinated me. Being half Spanish doesn't count much for nothing. But in a way, every American was half Japanese. The way it was ingrained in our culture. I was mostly focused on the video game aspect of the decision. Of course, it would be a great chance to play more Go. But when you considered video games, Japan was definitely the cooler of the two nations, the cooler of my two possible destinations. Spain's draw was personal. It was family. I started flicking my wrist in a rhythm, using the mouse to rapidly spin the globe between the two countries. Spain or Japan. I didn't have to make up my mind right then and there. I had plenty of time to think about it. I would let the answer come to me. When it was time to make a decision, it would be obvious. More immediately, I had a group of new students at the school. I had to take them on a short tour, ending at the university student hall, where they would get their ID badges. On my desk was a book, Japanese, a beginner's guide. I opened it up to a random page and saw the characters for telephone. Denwa is Japanese for telephone. The symbols for it included the symbol for electricity, and the symbol for electricity is easy to learn because it looks like a little cloud with raindrops falling down. It was easy enough to associate a rain cloud with lightning and electricity. Denwa, I said. I looked down at the book again. Denwa Bango, phone number. I smiled. Several hours later. Welcome to the University of Florida. My name is Justin Diamond. I'll be your tour guide today. We're going to start by walking across the street to the real main hub of campus. I'll point out anything interesting along the way. Eventually, we'll make our way to the Rights Union where we'll all get our ID badges. Sound good? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, I said to the group of new students. They weren't typical college students. They were the language rejects, the foreigners, mostly adults, whose English wasn't good enough to take classes at the university. They were made to improve their English at the language school where I worked, before moving on to real classes. Some were old enough to be white-haired and wrinkled. Most of them were South American, Venezuelan. All right, walk with me, I said, turning, and led the group towards campus. I glanced at a pocket of students and asked, anyone from Venezuela? Hey, the group shouted back. I had them pegged as the richy, bitchy kids from South America. You could tell that back home, they were upper class. They didn't want to work hard and were probably sent to the school as a sort of a compromise, not quite school, but not quite a vacation. Anyone from Spain? I asked. No answer. Anyone from Europe? There was one man who was from Turkey. There were a few Asians in the group. I knew that Asians could be sensitive about their nationality. It was also a big no-no to accidentally call a Chinese person Japanese, or vice versa, let alone all of the other small countries, all of which wanted to be acknowledged separately. Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and scores more that I couldn't remember. Anyone from Japan? Two people answered in the affirmative, bowing their heads slightly, a telltale sign that they hadn't been in the country for long. One of them was a man, the other a woman, but judging from their body language they had come separately. The man was short and stocky, the woman small and skinny. It was the woman who came to me first. I led our group under a small tunnel crossing 13th Street and looked down at this tiny Japanese woman who had crossed paths with me. She definitely looked foreign. She looked cute. She had the bangs and the long flowing hair of an anime character. She wore a short skirt and long sleeves over her arms that were entirely separate from her shirt. It was fashion from another dimension. I'd never seen anyone in Florida dressed even remotely like this tiny Japanese woman. Her nails were painted. No, not just painted, they had tiny little trinkets on them, glued on, I suppose. Her nails were almost ridiculously encrusted with these tiny plastic toy-looking things. One was Hello Kitty. Others were Japanese anime characters I recognized but couldn't remember the name of, and then I said, Denwa Bongo, without thinking, the Japanese word I had been practicing. I closed my mouth and immediately wished I could take it back. As an assistant English teacher, I wasn't supposed to speak in any other language. Ignorant. Fortunately, she must not have heard me and said, What? Only she shrugged her shoulders in a very exaggerated way, very cutesy. Hi. Justin, I said, extending a hand. I'm Sora, she said, and she had another cute little pose to go with her own introduction, which ended in her bowing. So low I wished I was there to see her underwear poking out from the opposite angle. I repeated her name like I was asking a question. Sora? Sora, she repeated. Sora. Again, she nodded her head and half bowed. It was a Japanese thing. Sora, can I ask you about something in Japanese I've read? Sure. Do you know Mizo Shobai? Mizo Shobai? Or is it Mizu Shobai? I was a little worried. She didn't get the reference. It's supposed to mean water trade or something like that. Ah, miso shobai, yes, but why? Where did you hear about it? Sora asked. It was from a book about Japan, pictures from the water trade that I had read a little while ago. Yes, Sora said, the meaning is a little difficult. Ah, but means a little nightlife, crubs, things like that, Sora said. Sora's explanation needed work, but I knew that I had asked her a difficult question. From what meaning she gave, I figured it was about the book. It meant about what the book implied it to mean. While there was probably no good direct translation, maybe Mizu Shobai, translated water trade, was what Japanese called their nightlife. Fast times. I turned away from Sora to address the group again. Okay, here are our tennis courts. They're free to use and they're open at night. Any tennis players in the group? Nobody raised their hand. Okay, come on. Under my breath, I turned away so that the students taking the tour couldn't hear it, and I repeated my word of the day. Denwa Bongo. An hour later, I was walking back from the Rights Union. Most of the group had dispersed once they had received their student ID badges, but Sora stayed by my side. I have to walk back to English school, I told her. I'm going there too, Sora answered, like she'd won a prize or something. While we were walking back, just the two of us, I said, I'm the English teacher. I'm supposed to be teaching you, but would you mind teaching me something in Japanese? Sure, Sora said. How about what's your phone number? Denwa bango o shiete kudasai. It was my first sentence in Japanese. What's your phone number? Denwa bango o shiete kudasai.